Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you for being here today at our Fireside Chat. This month we're doing a special celebration between Latinx at TP and women at TP, and for that we have a lot of special guests today to tell you a little bit about how it is to innovate in male-dominated industries, share their experiences, their learnings, and hopefully we're all going to get out of this conversation feeling super inspired and empowered as we finalize the celebrations for Women's History Month. I think most of you already know me, but in case you don't, my name is Luisa. I'm a VP for Client Solutions, and I'm also co-chair of the Latinx ERG. And today I'm happy to host this fireside chat with these three amazing women. So T, I'm gonna hand over to you. If you could please tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, like do a quick intro for us.
All right. Well, hi, I'm Chef T. Well, my name is Therese, but most people call me Chef T because I'm a chef. I live in Southwest Virginia, Bristol, Virginia. I like to tell people that we grow the food that Northern Virginia likes to brag about. So a lot of farms down here. And my family's originally from a small island called St. Vincent. And now I feel like this place, living in Appalachia, connects me so much to my family, because people always ask me like why are you here? You know, it's almost like I'm an anomaly by being here. But I mean, these mountains, like, I don't know if you guys have ever experienced them, but it's some of the best sleep I've ever had, and it connects me a lot to my roots. And I did not expect to be on this food journey that I'm on right now and experience it here in the middle of Appalachia. So yeah, I'm just grateful.
Thank you, T. Welcome and thank you for being with us. Julia, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. Kind of feel sorry that we're all remote. I wish we could have like a little bit of food next to us so that could be like part of our conversation.
Food drinks.
Or drinks, yeah, open to all of them. I think we need the full experience. We have water, which helps. But yeah, my name is Julia Braghieri. I'm a food engineer by training. I have over 10 years experience in the CPG realm, and the last 4 of them have been with NotCo, short for the Not Company. It's a plant-based food company that works with artificial intelligence to develop plant-based food. I'm originally from Brazil, but I've lived, I like to joke, I consider myself a citizen of the world. I've lived in over 5 countries. One of them has been the US. And for the past year or so, I've been located in New York. The main reason that I think I'm here, and I'd love to share a little bit of my background, is really having that point of view of, more often than not, I am the outsider in the room. I am the person that's not originally from there, the person that's, I'm a very curious person as well. So my background, I've had a very 360 view. So also most often than not, I'm new to what I'm doing, which I love. That for me is exhilarating. I love learning, but also gives a lot of cross ties in the sense, well, you don't have enough experience to tell me what you're talking about, which not necessarily is related to gender. Sometimes it's all more related to age. So I want to bring a little bit of that and how I, in my humble, innovative way, have been able to overcome that. But great to be here, and thank you for having me, Lou.
Thank you for being here too, Ju. And let me tell you that I know you have a lot of experience in being resilient, and I'm sure everyone will get some learning from you today. Thank you. Emma, with that, could you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you for having me. My name is Emma Grant, and I have been with Teleperformance since October of 2021. I came in as a director of operations for our TikTok program, based out of El Paso, Texas. So I am in a community that is right next door to that Latin influence, right? We border Mexico. So I was really excited when I got that call from you, that message, because A, I am very proud of my Latin heritage and I embrace it. And I love that we're talking about that. And B, I am also very proud of the influence that I had in having a really strong female role model while I was growing up. That was a little bit unheard of at that time. You know, she founded her own business in Mexico. But as I was coming up, I had my grandmother that I looked up to, and I was able to get some lessons from her that I'd love to share with all our participants today. Thank you so much.
And well, I'm going to go right into the questions then. Emma, I'm gonna take the hook that you just mentioned of having like an inspirational female figure in your life. And I've heard that all of us here have like very inspirational stories about women who represented strong role models. So why don't you start us by telling who your grandma was and what was the impact it had on you?
Sure. My grandmother actually lived in Ciudad Juarez, Mexico, which borders with El Paso, Texas, where I'm at. And in the 1950s, 1960s, women didn't have their own businesses. Women, were just coming up, especially in Mexico. That was a little bit further behind to where we were in the US at that time. So my grandmother, being a product of her environment at the time, had 11 children. And having very little education, she needed to find a way to provide for the children, right? My grandfather was a photographer, but even that was not enough to really support the family. And so I grew up with my grandparents until I was about 7, 8 years old. So I got to see this all firsthand, right? So my grandmother really looked for that opportunity. She looked for what was missing in her immediate area. And then she found a product that fit that need. So what my grandmother did was we lived in a border community, and being so close to the border, you have a lot of presence from customs, border patrol type of entities, even in Mexico. So she taught herself and my grandfather how to make the hats that officers wear and customs and border patrol agents wear. And she founded her business on that, did so well, and created a product at a price point that was so great that she ended up getting the whole contract for the Mexico Customs and Border Patrol organization. And with that business, it was housed out of the house that we lived in. We didn't have a dining room. We had a cutting and sewing room. But that business that she founded put all of the kids through school. In Mexico, you have to pay for public, even though it's public, you still have to pay for public education. You have to pay for your kids to go to school. So everyone went to school. Two of my aunts got their college degrees from that same business. She was able to open a couple other smaller business for her daughters to also be able to sustain themselves. But like I said, at that time, seeing that and seeing that she was a woman and seeing how she would sit down and really think through strategy, I got to see that firsthand, right? So that was one of those things that to me, I was like, wow, I want to be just like her. And that's always fueled me, and everything that I've done, it's always been if my grandmother could do it and she could do it during a time of so much adversity, especially being a woman, being a Latin woman, why can't I? So I have no excuse not to be successful. And that's really what's always fueled me.
That's amazing. And I absolutely love the fact that your grandma actually put your grandpa to work for her. So that is
Yep.
like in the 50s and the 60s. Talk about disruption, right? That's amazing. And T, I heard you also have a very special female inspiration in your life. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, also, shout out to grandmothers, right? My grandma really, she had this house. My grandma's from this island called St. Vincent, and she had this house that basically it was our family home. And my cousin actually was a mechanic, and he would like just have all these people every day over to the house because he came to the US and then went back to St. Vincent. He would basically like teach the trade. And so whether you had shirt or shoes, like my grandmother cooked every day. You were welcomed in her kitchen, and that's how she showed love. She showed love through food. And my grandmother was a woman of stature. She was the matriarch of the family. She was the glue that held everything together. And she raised me until I was about 9. And when I think about food and I think about my gift and I think about what I was put here to do, like I always think about my grandmother. And I think about like just having passion for this industry is not enough. I would have left it a long time ago. It's that desire. It is that it is that ability to think about the legacy that my grandmother tried to leave without even knowing that that was something that she was doing. And now, like, I view food through the eyes and soul of my grandmother whenever I think about what I want to do in this profession, how the legacy that I want to leave behind, the people that I want to teach, and, you know, how food can impact. Because I think about, like, how could something that you ingest evoke nostalgia? It creates this process in your mind that can bring you back months, minutes, years, hours, so far that it's removed from the situation, but it's also connected. And I don't know, I just feel like my grandmother gave me this gift because no one else in my family, I mean, they cook, but no one else does it the way that I do it at the level that I try to do it at. And I owe my grandmother for that. And she passed away before I could I can thank her, or I think before I could even understand the gift that she left me. She passed away. She had Alzheimer's, and but every day I do this. I do this in honor of her because I'm just grateful, and I know she's watching down on me, and I know she's super proud on days when I want to give up. I cannot, because like she's with me all the time, and I don't want to let her down. But yeah, I'm grateful for this ability.
It's really amazing when we get that sense of passion coming from our family, right? And from a loved one specifically, even if it's not our direct parents and all, it kind of gives us a feeling of belonging, right? When we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah, because I'm gonna tell you, like my mom, and my mom's from the same school of thought. She's also West Indian, and my mom just didn't understand. And she is a nurse, and she's like, "You need to be a nurse. This is what you need to do." My sisters are nurses, and that's what they love to do. And like, even when I presented her, like she said to me, she was like, "You're wasting your life standing in front of a stove cooking for people." She didn't understand the math, the dynamic, the psychology, just the different things that went into cooking. And I couldn't even explain it into words, the gift that my grandmother had given me, to be able to have it make sense to her. So like she like kicked me out the house. I was living in my car, and I was just like, I'm just gonna put myself through culinary school. And I decided, because being a woman in this industry, like when you walk into a restaurant, or say like, hey, you have to be twice as fast, you have to know twice as much, and you have to be more badass than all the people that's out there. And if not, they don't consider you for anything besides making salads or baking the cakes. And I knew that's not what I wanted to do. And when I realized that, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go to culinary school because I felt that degree would validate me. Unfortunately, it didn't. $100,000 later, it didn't. But I'm gonna tell you, like, putting my craft first and working really hard and doing the TV stuff, it opened the doors. It provided the validation for the thing that I already knew, and it just made it easier for people to accept me. So it's okay to have a seat at the table, but then also, can you be a part of the conversation? Because they can allow you to sit there, but then tell you to shut up. But I use that platform to basically allow myself to not only have a seat, but to be able to be a part of the conversation and to be a memorable voice.
That's amazing. And it's funny how, in theory, stereotypically speaking, cooking is a role for a woman, right? When we consider the social standards, but at the same time, being in a kitchen professionally is a space that you don't easily
Male
conquer.
dominated.
So it's very tricky, right? How things normally work. And Ju, I'm gonna move on to you a little bit. So I know that you shared this passion for food as well, from a different perspective, but I also know you share a lot of the drive and a few of the things that T said that are, you can't just earn the seat at the table. You need to own and occupy it fully, right? So can you tell us a little bit about your experience in the food industry, how you conquered the space and how you thrive in that space?
Am I on mute? No, I'm back.
Yeah.
No, of course. And I just want to echo what T said. Definitely a big shout out for grandmothers. They're such a big influence to us that we don't even imagine. As T was was saying. I remembered, for example, the fact that part of my family is Italian, even though I'm originally from Brazil. My grandma migrated to Brazil when she was like 18 years old, came with a suitcase in her hand to take care of her brothers, and on the side started her own like pasta business, if you would, but really to help put food to the table. And I was thinking about it. I was like, what's my main role model? And I kind of feel like I feel off of different people that have been in my life. Of course, I admire my grandmother, I admire my mom, but I honestly think that what was my biggest driver was having the lack of clear female role models in the business industry. I always knew that I liked business and I wanted to really make an impact through the business landscape. But growing up, and I think maybe at that time in Brazil, in my family, I did not have anyone that was a businesswoman. It was my father. It was all male references for me. But for me, that was what was my drive. It was like, how could there not be any woman? I want to be one of the first women that can be in the family and say, hey, I had an international career. I was one of the people leading our household to expand. So just to then trickle into what I do in the food industry. But I think that was one of my biggest drivers. I had great role models, and I feel like throughout my career, I've always fed off, like, for example, when I worked with Lou or when I worked with, like, everybody has something that inspires us. And I think one of the big potentials of this community that we're building is how do we collectively create the sisterhood that pushes ourselves up. And I think for me, what has been my big positive note is I'm super curious and I always take an opportunity to learn. So I think sometimes when it's more in a male dominated or even an older room to take the seat at the table, I'm not afraid of asking the hard questions. I'm not saying, hey, I'm not clear. I think this other route could be a route. And more often than not, it's people are not asking the questions and everybody's not speaking up. So you're making the right questions and being curious. And there's even kind of a Buddhist saying that's called Shoshin, that you don't know what you don't know. I think that's been a big blessing throughout my career of like, I don't know what I don't know, and I'm going to find out and I'm going to learn more about it. Versus sometimes you're paralyzed when you're, yeah, technically I don't know this, so I shouldn't speak up. So it could be more of an ignorance bliss, if you would, but it's definitely helped me not be afraid to speak my mind and to put myself at the table as well.
Thank you, Ju. And I completely agree with you. I think that a few years ago, it was really hard for us to find female role models, right? And especially if they're not part of the traditional stereotypical image. We don't see, or nowadays we do, but in the past, like maybe 5 to 10 years ago, first of all, we didn't have social media being as powerful as it is right now. So knowing things was kind of limited. You were limited to your circle, to the newspaper, local newspapers, television.
Mm-hmm.
And we wouldn't see, for example, trans women, Black women, gay women, Latin women. It's like everything was kind of like more towards a certain standard. And nowadays, I think that not only we see more of that, but we're also speaking more about it and, you know, breaking the ceiling, or like breaking the glass ceiling. I don't know how is the proper expression. But we're kind of breaking it for other generations that are coming along, right?
And I also think we're changing what the word role model is. Because if you think about our grandmothers, our mothers, they were amazing role models, but maybe to the traditional what's considered successful, they weren't. And now that I have a little bit more of a mature view and we're talking more about it, I look at my mom and I admire her so much for everything she was. We only got where we got because she was able to be accompanying us through the shifts of countries we were living in. So I think also the shift of what success means changed a lot, and bringing more plurality to the role models for sure.
That's exactly true.
Yeah, I think that shift also, when we look at it, all of us that can recognize that our grandmothers, you know, were these role models, may have taken that responsibility passed on to us to really be able to say, hey, you know what? I don't have to be wearing a suit and work at a C-level to be somebody's role model. You know, someone's always looking at me. So I have that responsibility and that obligation to help that next person. You know, I don't have to be here to make that happen. Like as I was coming up, you know, I saw that as well. And I saw my role in it. And I took that very seriously, you know, like here's this person that is looking to me for guidance and is looking to me, you know, for that growth. And it's a great responsibility. And I think the fact that we're all recognizing and we can see it as that has helped to elevate the number of role models that we're seeing, the number of people that now behave in a similar fashion.
And Emma, on that same note, I'm gonna ask you something, because I remember when I was growing up, and probably we all do, that we were instigated to have like certain competition, right? Like women were our enemies, and especially in
Yes.
professional environments, it was like, oh, she's trying to pull the rug from under me or things like that. And now, luckily, we have a like much different scenario, right? And working with Julia, for example, in the past, we learned to be partners and to be like supportive of each other. So, Emma, tell us a little bit about what you do within your teams to create that kind of environment of like whoever goes up pulls the other one, and those kinds of practices.
It's all about the example we're setting, right? What culture are we building? It's interesting that you brought that question because I want to say about a week or two ago, I saw this interesting little picture, right? And the depiction on that image was at some point, people used other people to climb on top of each other to move up. And that was the old perception. And now the new one is you're using other people, but everybody's lifting each other up so that once that person gets to the top, they throw a rope over so everybody else can also climb up, right? And I think that's the culture that as a leader, I am focused on building within my teams, right? It's not about who's going to move up and leave everyone behind. If I'm moving up, there's a responsibility that I have, right? So it's the constant mentorship and internally, within my sphere of influence, right? What I try to do is, okay, you're good at this. Now let's get you to use your strength to teach somebody else also how to do this, so that there's that cohesiveness, the you're not my competition. You're that person that I'm either going to learn from or I'm going to help. And I think that's the shift that we really have to focus on. It's not everybody is going to have their turn and everybody's going to have their opportunity. And it's our responsibility to clap for everybody when that happens. Just because it's not you right now doesn't mean it's not going to be you in a month from now.
100%. And I also think vulnerability plays such a big role, like using the example from Lou. I remember both of us were at a moment in our times in our career and we clicked when we both were vulnerable to each other. It was like, this is going on. Just like, oh my God, the same thing with me. And how do you do it? How do you relate? So I think the moments that I had that was truly vulnerable and genuine, and that's when I was most able to connect with be it regardless of gender. And I think showing that side is like, we're okay to fail, we're human, and this is how I deal with it. Can you help me? How can I help you? But for me, vulnerability is a huge part as well.
That's really interesting that you mentioned that because that's a great observation. Having, and it's just my thought, having more women leaders in the workplace has allowed us to also shift the emotions that we see in the workplace, right? Coming up, I came up where it was still very male dominated and, you didn't show so much compassion, it was more cutthroat. It was very competitive, because that was the environment that worked before. And I think what I've seen as a shift has been because we do allow, ourselves to care and show that we care, right? And we do allow what naturally, flows from us to flow naturally. It's impacted our work dynamic as well. And it's created an environment where more people are free to be themselves. They're free to say, hey, you know what? I'm having a bad day today. I don't know how to go about my day.
I'm gonna move this question to you. So we're talking about the business environment where clearly the pressures are kind of different, right? There are time sensitive issues, but I imagine not as much as in a kitchen, right? What is it like for you, for example, encountering spaces of vulnerability and connecting with people and actually having your network of support in the kitchen?
So I'm going to tell you, I run an entirely male team. So I am their leader. And my restaurant is a open kitchen concept. And when I say open, like people literally line the counters and they can sit and watch us cook everything, plate everything. They can they can touch us if they want to. They can interact with us. And it has been the most emotions that I've had to navigate governing a group of men. And I always like, I tell my guys this one thing, and I tell them like, no one takes the A train to Mecca. Mecca means the destinations where to various successes, you know? And along that journey, there's so much you have to encounter. And sometimes you just have to take a step back and you have to breathe. The problem is that when you try to operate in tunnel vision, you get stuck, you get lost. There's only so far that you can go. You have to get out of that mindset and really get into the bird's eye view. And I got that bird's eye view just from experience because, like, growing up in this industry, you know, my mentor, the person that trained me, he was a guy. He was a master chef from France. But the woman that really molded me, she was the one day in and day out. She coached me. She understood what it was like to be young, Black, and gifted. She understood what it was like to be a woman in this industry. She instilled in me this aspect of constant, gentle pressure where you don't have to be the loudest voice in the room to be the most effective, but you don't have to feel diminished because no one knows that you were here. And she showed me how to navigate that and how to really like be like cream and just separate and rise to the top. And that's what I employ now with like my employees, because like when you're with people, again, food is this thing that you're putting into your body. And for a long time, I didn't know how to process it. I was very nervous, and I was also very scared because like when people would leave reviews, I didn't have time to think about it. I had to just be strong for my customers. I had to for my team. I had to lead them. I had to navigate. I had to figure out a way to not let my own personal emotions affect what was happening. And then every January, I would actually just take 14 days and I would feel all those feelings and I would absorb all the things that I have encountered that entire year and just allow it to break me down, but also allow it to build me back up and assess the situation and figure out where I went wrong, what I shouldn't have done, where I actually went right, but people are people, and really, really build myself back. Because with the title of chef, whether I put on my apron or not, like I've been on this call for 30 minutes and I've already gotten about 20 phone calls. That's what my phone almost fell just now. It is, they expect you to know everything. They expect me. And when I walk into that kitchen, there's a humbleness about me, but they're looking at me like I am the encyclopedia and chef has to know everything. And the minute chef doesn't know everything, then my staff would never disrespect me like this. But in kitchens I've seen, when chef is a female and doesn't know everything, you're automatically disrespected or you're dismissed, and your team will actually, that's how the inmates end up running the asylum. Your team will actually break you down into pushing you out of your position and make you start questioning yourself. But food is very vulnerable because it's what it is, and that's just it's either good or it's not. You know, there's just an integrity that cannot be dismissed or hidden when it comes to food. So that's the term, you're only as good as your last meal. And it's been a very big learning lesson for me in this industry. I've had super highs, I've had super lows, but the thing that I realize is that no one takes the A train to Mecca. If I continue to think of this as a journey and bring all the people along that I can and continue to not know everything, but learn everything along the way and share my knowledge, then that's I think is a good recipe that I have for success right now.
That is a great point, right? The expectation of having to know everything. And I think that expectation comes from the outside, as you were mentioning, like the team expects the chef to know everything. And if they don't, then they break it like until you're not the chef anymore. But I think it's also a little bit ingrained in all of us, right? How much pressure we put on ourselves. That is, oh, if I don't know this, as Julia was mentioning, if I don't know this, then I shouldn't be speaking, or I'm not entitled to the position I'm in. And it brings us back to, we need to have a curiosity mindset, right? And just ask questions. You don't know what you don't know. So again, it's just like being in this vulnerable place and actually saying, okay, I'm gifted. As you said, like, I might be young, I am gifted, and just embracing that, but also saying like, this is my vision, this is where I'm headed. With that, I'm going to move on to my next question that I actually planned for the end, but I'm going to anticipate it a little bit. That is, when we're saying you don't know what you don't know, there are a lot of things that we know now that we wish we had known it sooner, right? And I want to hear from you. What would what would that advice be, or what would that item be that you wish you knew 15 years ago, 10 years ago, like the proper age behind us? But Emma, I'm gonna go with you first. What would be the advice you would give your younger self? Like, what learning?
Well, I think the biggest learning from me is really not everybody is gonna be you, or is gonna be able to um, treat situations like you would. And the advice I would give my younger self is, there's going to be times where you're looking out for people, you're seeing things in people that maybe they don't see themselves yet. You see that potential, you're all smiling because I bet you it's happened to you, right? And there's going to be times where those people disappoint you, for whatever reason. And the important thing is the lesson I've learned is that that choice and that growth that you want to see in them may be the initial thing that fuels you, to want to be to work with that person. But ultimately, you're doing it because you, as a person, are good, because you're at this point, where you see potential and you see an opportunity, and you're trying to create that growth for them. If you are disappointed, don't take it personal, because at the end of the day, you're doing what feels right. You're doing what feels appropriate for you, and it's your journey too. So part of your journey is also to create those pathways where whether people want to walk them or not, right? You're doing your job as a leader, as a mentor. And if people don't take those opportunities, don't take that personal. Continue to do what feels right. Some people, sometimes they have that minor setback and it pushes them back, and then they don't want to try again. And as leaders, as role models, we've got to understand that not everybody's going to walk that same pathway that maybe you walked to your success, but the fact that you're creating that pathway is the right thing, and that's going to feel good for you in the long run.
That's amazing. And it's right? It's really tough to remember that people don't necessarily see things the way we do, especially when you're rushing or under a lot of pressure. Julia, I'll go with you. What would you consider to be that advice?
I'd definitely say it's a lesson that I'm still learning. So when I talk to my younger self, I haven't cracked it yet, so bear with me. But I would definitely say it's how can you be your genuine, unapologetic self, understanding that you're plural. So as we were talking about vulnerability, yes, we are more feminine. There is the vulnerability aspect to it. But for example, more often than not, I do feel like I have a masculine side of me, and that's okay because we do have both of them. And I think throughout my career, especially in the business landscape, in my head, I always thought you need to be more masculine to succeed, and you have to diminish a little bit of your feminine side. But at the same time, I am feminine, so how can I be more masculine but be feminine? So you can have both sides, and that's okay. And try to find what your unapologetic self is, and you'll get there. And the second one, which is I'm always, Lou knows me, I'm always at 100 miles per hour, like speed is my middle name. But there are things that can't be rushed. And there are things that it's not hard skills, but soft skills. And it comes with time. It comes with more experience. It comes with the hard experiences. And that's where you start aging like fine wine, just to keep on the food analogies here.
Yeah,
Say
good
both of those.
Yeah, that's actually true. And like my mom used to have a saying that I hated when she said that to me. And I only realized I grew up whenever I used that saying, that is, you cannot have 9 women that are pregnant and you're not going to have a child in 1 month. So like the process is still going to happen. And I don't know if that saying makes sense in English, but you get the picture. And it's true, right? Some things just come with time, and it's frustrating that you have to wait to learn. Like, T, what would you give yourself as an advice?
So, like, I would definitely reiterate to my younger self, like, heavy's the head that really wears the crown, because with ownership, entrepreneurship, leadership, there's a great responsibility. I would tell myself to learn to manage my own emotions properly before I can troubleshoot managing other people's emotions, because this industry I'm in, as fruitful as it is, it's very volatile. There's so many, like, this is an industry of misfits. We deal with everybody, from when you can't pass a background check, like you show up and you cook, like when you are spiraled out in life, you show up and you cook, and the kitchen accepts and embraces everyone. So there's so many different attitudes and emotions and feelings that happens in the kitchen. But I would really tell myself about managing my own emotions before troubleshooting other people's emotions, and really thinking about this less as a competition and more about a progression, staying in my own lane, and not watching what someone else is doing, and really focusing and harnessing and perfecting what I want to do. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be consistent. Not being afraid to take challenges, and not being afraid to speak up, and I distinctly remember when I was working hard and I showed up to the job and I was like, hey, like, I'm ready for the promotion now. And my boss decides that he's like, okay, I'm going to give you a promotion. And he's like, well, you have to do a cook's test. And I was like, I've been working for you for 2 years. I have to do a cook's test. And I did the test, and then I got the promotion, and I showed up after like doing 15-hour days, and he puts me on 5 a.m. shifts making salads on the line. Like I was just absolutely livid, but I didn't give up. I stuck with it. Like, as sucky as it sounds, there is a certain amount of shit that you have to shovel in this industry. You have to pay your dues. You have to shuck your 10,000 oysters. There's stuff that you have to do it. And if you do it without complaining, you know what that does? That gives you the experience, because everything in this industry is not, for me personally, is not on a silver platter. People don't get into this industry to cook because it's a 9-to-5 job and you have weekends off and you're always this. But also, don't let anyone tell you that your mental health is not important, and for you to create balance in all of that. So yes, while you're shoveling shit, I also need next Saturday off. So there needs to be a balance of what is happening. And I would tell myself that more and more: balance, balance, balance.
That's amazing. And balance is normally something we forget, right? I think kind of regardless of the industry, we tend to become a little bit workaholics. And well, I know I do that sometimes and kind of forget, or actually I sometimes forget that self-balance, and I need someone and part of my network of support, that is, someone reminds me, hey, you haven't been drinking enough water, or you haven't slept well, maybe you should rest a little bit. And having that network of support is actually, besides being self-aware, is actually very important too, right? And T, I'm going to continue with you, and I'm going to ask you this. You said a lot about like learning to manage your own emotions before you troubleshoot someone else's emotion. Can you give us an example of like a challenge that you overcame or recently went through when managing your team's emotions and people?
So I'm going to tell you, I have a guy right now, and when I was building this team for this restaurant, a lot of people just started reaching out to me, and they're like, hey, chef, I want to work for you, before we even put like the we're hiring online. And being in this community, I am also an outsider, because I've only been living here a short time, and other people in the community know the staff. So when I decided to hire them, they basically said, hey, when I call for references, they're like, this guy, he has a bad attitude, like you shouldn't hire him, When I interviewed him, of course, I got a different sense, because you're interviewing. You're not going to see the person's work ethic. But I always tell people, hey, I don't need a resume. I need to see what you can do in the kitchen. So he got in the kitchen, and the first 3 services, he was just like all over the place, and he was just like snapping. And I would go over to him and I would say, because I tell my guys straight on the line, I'm like, dude, listen, you just need to take a deep breath. No one takes the A train to Mecca, you know? You just got to calm it down. And then I took him into the walk-in and I was like, let me tell you something. I'm not scared of you. Other people, what they did was when you had a bad attitude, they wrote you off. You see me? You are too good. You are too good for me to write you off. So if you want to yell, scream, kick, you could do all that right now. But when we get back on the line, I need you to show up and do the job that not even what I'm paying you to do, but do the job that I know that you're skilled and talented enough to do. And when you go out there and you do that, your employees will automatically respect you, because then it becomes more about focusing on compartmentalizing how busy we are versus, hey man, I told you to drop those prawns 3 minutes ago and you didn't do it. It's more about now coaching and communicating. Did you communicate with him as effectively as you could have for him to remember to drop the prawns? You know what I mean? So, and to be honest with you, 2 nights ago, I sat down with him and he said, he was like, I'm just trying to be your guy. Like, and I know he wants to be my sous chef so bad. And he's like, we have a saying now. He's like, I'm trying, chef, I'm trying. I was like, don't try, just do. And he shows up to work early, and I know his challenges. His home life is crazy. He's like on the verge of like getting kicked out from where he's at. So I'm like, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna help you out. My friend owns these apartments. I'm gonna set you up with her, but I'm gonna give you the tools, but I'm not gonna call her and do it for you. I'm gonna give you the tools to help you out and kind of ease the frustration. If you continue to show up here with a positive attitude every day, and to hear him say that, just like, it made me just, I don't know, I felt overjoyed because like I felt like he was turning a corner. So we do these things weekly called like our rising stars, and he was one of my first rising stars because I wanted to show him that I was appreciative of how he really took that cooler chat, right? Because it took a lot. There was a lot of bumping on the chest, like, yo, you need to, I'm not scared of you, you know? And when he realized that, number one, I was going to take his shit, but number two, not only was I going to continue to give him my time and mold him, but that someone else had his back and someone else also validated that he was good enough. And I think that's all he was really looking for, to the fact that he just was just like, man, I'm good and I'm shoveling all this shit and no one recognized me or even tell me like, thank you. And this is like one of the best guys in my kitchen now. And I'm just, I don't know. It made me feel good to play a small part in this kid's like journey, you know?
And if I can,
Yeah,
sorry,
go
and if I
ahead.
can, one thing that was super interesting about your story is also, to your point, like understanding from where the person is coming from. So understanding cultural differences. So I can speak from my perspective. Sometimes my feeling so far working with the US, sometimes we're more direct than in the workforce, or at least in the business landscape, than in the US. So it's also understanding how's the most effective way for me to be able to get that message across, understanding my style of communication, but the person that's receiving it as well. So to your point, like having that cooler conversation helped, and it was precise, effective. And then also us as one of the aspects is also the woman gender vision, but also being Latins, for example, in the workforce, how you adapt your communication style.
But even in gender roles, like because I'm a woman and because he's still a male, I'm a Black woman, he's a white male. But even though I'm the boss, it did not embarrass him. Even though what you're saying is correct, it didn't embarrass him in front of his peers, you know? It was just a direct conversation with him and I put him on the level where we both were equal, you know? Like, here's where we're at right now. You can say what you want to say, bro, you know? And that, I think, just, it gained more respect, but it also calmed him down.
Yeah, no, it was amazing because you were able to understand the communication style, so it was great.
Yeah, it's a very amazing like empathy lesson too, right? That you just listen to the person as they are, you forget about the roles and responsibilities and titles, and you just say, okay, I'm validating your emotions right now, come here, let's fix this. And it's also a lesson on generosity, right? On how you donate your time and your ear
And
to be,
emotions.
and emotions. And it goes to a point that you said that you need to know yourself really well, right? Because if you don't, you might get triggered by it and just like snap back, which is not necessarily the most effective way of communicating, right?
Exactly.
And Emma, let me ask you this. Have you ever seen something similar in your career? Quite a
Yes,
lot.
several times. Yes, I always say we're in the business of people, right? If you're a manager, you're not a business person, you're a people person, right? Because at the end of the day, whether you work in a kitchen, whether you work in a business, if the people are not moving in that direction that you want them to go, your business is going to fail. I have had those situations. As a matter of fact, I was actually chatting with someone that challenged me as a leader years ago, right? Uh, and I'm thankful for it because I think I became a better leader. So I did have someone who, anytime I would address anything, it was always very negative. It became very defensive. And every time, like I'd walk away and I'd be like, what am I doing wrong? And try a new approach, right? Because like I said, this person, great potential, very smart. I could see more than they could see for themselves, right? So that was the part that for me was somewhat frustrating. And I had to learn as a leader years ago that every style you take is not gonna work for everybody. Everybody's different. And what I'm loving about this conversation that I'm hearing here is I keep on hearing examples of how we as women bring our compassion and our empathy to the table and readjust. I'm sure at one point or another you all had leaders and some of them were just very rigid and didn't bend. And I think as a female leader, it's been easier for me to make those moves where I do have to bend. So going back to this story, this young leader that I had working for me, know, these conversations were always good and had good intent, but I wasn't communicating effectively to T's point, right? There was something there that was not allowing that. So what I discovered was with this specific person, I started taking a different approach where I would bring them in and I would say, hey, we're going to practice something. We're going to talk about a situation. We're going to talk about something that we could be doing better. But before we talk about the why or how we're going to fix it, we're going to put the issue on the table, and then we're both going to walk away for a little bit so we can process, digest it, and then we're going to come back to the table tomorrow once we've had an opportunity to think about it and talk about solutions and how to prevent this in the future. I noticed that when we took that approach with this person, it definitely started working very well. And it was just more so the understanding, right? I had to learn as a leader that sometimes people take a little bit longer to process the information and to understand what it is that you're trying to get across to them. But that specific individual like helped me to be so much better as a leader because I had never done that before. I was still a little bit younger in my career. This was maybe like 15, 17 years ago. And I've taken that same approach, with different situations since then. And it just gave me something else for my toolbox. But the great thing is that that person continued to grow within their career. And I was able to see that growth and I was able to see how far they could get. And we're still very good friends, and we talk about that situation. We just talked about it this past weekend, right? Because I was like, hey, do you remember when you were really stubborn and I could never talk to you about anything? He was like, yeah, I was a handful, wasn't I? I was like, but look at how great you are now. So definitely feels good to know that sometimes when you're in those roles, you don't have all the answers for every specific situation. So you have to try different approaches. So I love what you did, T, with the whole, going in the ice cooler, getting away from people. Uh, Definitely love that.
Breathe therapy is what we call it.
It's amazing what that word will do. I had a peer that reached out last week. They sounded a little frazzled, and I was like, "Hey, just do me a favor. Breathe. Take a step
Yeah.
back and just breathe."
Mhm.
And after you say that, yeah, you're right. I love it.
It's amazing. So we're almost reaching our final time. Um, First of all, I'd like to thank you all for bringing your experience and being so open about it, right? Our shortcomings or advantages and all that. But I do want to, I do want to ask you a final question, and maybe in one word. If you had to say that, like, what represents being a woman, being a leader in the industry, being disruptive, what word would you choose as, like, typically us?
Oh,
Whoever wants to go first, I'm not gonna dictate that.
Pick one. I definitely think curious would be among my top picks. The flexibility, kind of like the explorer mindset, if you would.
I love that. Curious is a really good word. I
Mhm.
actually learned from Whitney, who's on my team. She taught me, I'm gonna completely remember the name wrong, but the elevator of emotions and the optimal state for you, whether that is in business or in life, is actually to be curious. When you're feeling like this, you're in your optimal state. And it's not like feeling great or feeling anything else. It's just feeling curious. So absolutely love it. Emma, would you like to go next?
Sure. I'm gonna say hungry.
yeah.
Don't laugh, T. You got me hungry right now. No, it's not even about that. I I think just being hungry for many things. Hungry for knowledge, hungry for understanding. Um, a lot of people hear the term hungry and they think it just means, being motivated to climb that ladder. And for me, it has so many different dimensions. To T's point earlier, I too went back to school and got my MBA, furthered my education, got a few certifications on top of that, not because I needed them, but because I knew the value behind them. And just to have that seat and to be recognized, I knew I was going to have something that said, yeah, I am an industry expert. I do know what I'm talking about. So just that hunger throughout my career has helped me. My hunger right now is in helping people. How do I take what I know and how do I take what what's at my what's at my disposal, those things that are immediately in front of me, and help other people that are working either within TP or my organization, which is why I'm doing this. When you reached out, I was like, absolutely. If anyone can learn from me, yep, let's do it. Because that's the current hunger that I have. I want to help. So definitely be hungry.
Thank you. And I think
So,
we're all kind of hungry and curious to go to T's restaurant right now. But
yeah,
Right?
go check it out.
T, the floor is yours.
All right. So my word is a little bit different because like this word means a lot to me. So the one word I would say would probably be paradigm. So when a revelation happens, then a purposeful action is evoked. And that's what happens when you have a paradigm shift. A couple of years ago, I was diagnosed with a macroadenoma tumor on my pituitary gland. And the tumor would threaten to like take away my peripheral vision and then my regular vision. And I just found myself like super tired all the time. Finally went to the doctor and then they found this tumor and they were like, well, the tumor is like super huge. We'll probably need to have brain surgery. And finally it ended up that they can like treat it through a pill and decrease the size of the tumor. But I only found that out because like I was not able to like lose weight. I was so tired and I was just gaining weight all the time, but I didn't have a thyroid issue. And I after they got me like on these meds and fully in control, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And I was like, this plus a brain tumor, I have to do something. That is when I had a paradigm shift. So I wrote a cookbook actually called The Macro Paradigm. And when I had this shift, I basically used food to save my life. So I'm no longer diabetic. Like I have a normal person's blood sugar. And I wrote this book to let people know that you don't have to kill yourself with food. Like food is something that is sustenance and nourishment to your body, but because of marketing and GMOs, like people don't understand how to eat. And because they feel like farmers markets are more expensive, they don't understand how to eat properly. So I taught them through this book. But if I didn't experience this paradigm shift, I lost over 50 pounds and really take control of my life. I really don't think that I would be here, or I'd be super sick, you know? And I think that when you have a revelation and a purposeful action is then enacted, I think that is the word that really is the word that I really want to use, because a lot of people, like, it's like, I want to go back to school, I want to do this, I want to do that, and you keep making these excuses because life continues to happen. But life is going to continue to happen no matter what. And when you really have that shift and focus, you come up with a plan. I'm going to make sure that I have a babysitter. I'm going to make sure I do this because I want to go back to school, because you want to be an entrepreneur. You want to open your own business and you want to do that. When you start putting the steps into motion, that's when you're truly having that true paradigm experience. So that's it for me.
I absolutely love that. And I think there couldn't have been a better wrap up to our conversation than the 3 words you shared and your stories as well, right? I would love to thank you all for being here. You're amazing. And I definitely feel inspired to continue with my day, to continue with my week. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did, because honestly, it was wonderful.
It was amazing.
Thanks
Thank
for
you for
having me.
having me.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you
for having
so
us.